This is the offspring of the first generation that really didn't pass on their values. From the greatest generation that went through the war and everything, it quickly turned to a generation with Dr. Spock and all the relativism and the free love and all this, to where it isn't being passed on. So now it's up to individual people to kind of assess, what is your values? And we see this coming out daily in the news, that your value is whatever pleases me, right? So whatever offends me has got to be wrong, because whatever is good is what's pleasing to me. And so now you have things like, if you say something, even though you mean it to be right, or you're saying a compliment, but they really didn't want to hear that, it's microaggression. You're being aggressive just in small bits, but you're being aggressive. You know, and you're like, oh, what am I doing? What am I saying? So much so that feelings, whether your feelings get hurt, really is, everything's valued on that. Everything's either right or wrong on that. And it's centered mostly in the colleges. It's gotten so bad that one professor in Georgia State University told the students who felt that they were getting microaggression when they had to do combined assignments. He said, if you feel microaggression or you feel uncomfortable at all, like they give you an assignment you don't think you need to be doing, you can leave that group immediately. And you're not responsible for that homework. Like, what? It didn't stop there. Students can continue to leave that, and so they didn't participate in that. So they said, we know the material, but we didn't do that, participate in that group assignment to get a grade because we felt microaggression, and therefore it's not right that you give us and grade us on that. And you know what he said? He said, then you give yourself a grade that you feel comfortable with. And here's what he said. So that you give yourself the right grade, you have to wait a week before and think about your grade and then give me your grade. Oh, for crying out loud. How stupid are we getting? Finally, the dean, after the second class, so that one full class got to give themselves a grade. Can you imagine? Straight A, straight A, straight A, B plus, B plus, straight A, straight A, you know. So, my goodness. Only the nerds graded themselves like, oh, I think I got a B minus, you know. All the other people are, you're stupid. Give yourself an A plus. Oh, my goodness. God's law points to us and says we're guilty. We need to accept the charge, not accuse the law. That's the difference. That's being real. A real person stands up and takes the heat. A real person says, I don't like what I'm hearing, but I have to agree with it. And this is where I've fallen short. And he continues in verses 17 through 19. He says this, but now it is no longer I who do it, but sin who dwells in me. For I know that in me, that is, in my evil nature, in my flesh, nothing good dwells. For to will is present with me, but how to perform what is good, I do not find. For the good that I will to do, I do not do. But the evil I will not to do, that I practice. That's what I end up doing over and over and over. So what is he saying? He goes, I've got the right attitude, I got the right mind, but two, I have a saboteur in me. Somebody's aboard ship that keeps sabotaging the direction we're going. I have a saboteur in me that is my flesh. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is hindering my plans. The spirit is willing. The spirit wants to. I agree with the spirit. I agree with the law. But then the flesh comes up and countermands that order. And I I don't want to sin, but I end up fighting with my sinful nature. See, before salvation, it wasn't a saboteur. Before salvation, at one degree or another, I tried to help my flesh. I knew it wasn't necessarily the right thing, but I helped my flesh as much as possible if I could get away with it, right? And some people didn't even care. I'm just going to do it whether I get caught or not, so I'm going to help. And others were a little more sneaky about it, but I'm going to cater to my flesh, and I'm going to help my flesh as long as I don't get caught. To the point of, I'm not going to cross that line because the consequences are too high, so I'm going to hold back. But I'm with you, man. I'm with you, flesh. I wish we could just go hog wild in that area. And after we got saved, now he says, here's the problem. Flesh says, how come you're not helping me anymore, man? How come you're not with me? You used to do this with me. You used to be gung-ho. You used to give me thumbs up. And now you're going, Well, I'm taking over, man. It's a fight now, right? And so he's going, I've got this battle going on. You know, and he says that there's no good thing in the flesh. He's trying to say, he's not saying that your flesh is evil and that an unsaved person can't do anything good. So he's not saying your elbow, that's part of your flesh, right? He's not saying your elbow is evil. Evil elbow. Evil elbow. He's not saying that parts of you are evil. What he's saying is your evil nature or your flesh or your sins are not redeemable. You don't throw a fit and say that was righteous anger. You don't say, you don't lust and go, well, that's just how God created me. You don't take something that's evil and say, it's okay, it's good. I can work with this. I can work with this sin and somehow call it good. No, if the law is saying it's bad and unusable, don't use it. Don't cater to it. Don't, coddle it. It's almost like saying, I've got some really stinking eggs. They're really stinky eggs. They're rotten eggs, right? I can still make an omelet. No, you can't. Yeah, I can. I'll mix it up, throw some salt and pepper in there. Doesn't help. I'm going to throw some, chopped bell pepper. Doesn't help. Green chili solves everything. It doesn't help. Cheese, right? No, you still have rotten eggs, right? Bacon solves everything. Well, maybe bacon. I don't know. No, it's rotten eggs, right? It's not going to make a good omelet. And that's like what he's saying is, there's nothing in the sin that we have that is usable in God's kingdom. It's like rotten eggs. It's bad. It just, no matter how much you cover up, how much you flavor it, how much you try to sell it, it's unusable. So nothing in my sinful nature, in my sins, is usable in God's kingdom. You can't redeem anger. You don't redeem lust. You don't use bitterness for good. So then he says, but I do what I don't want to do on a regular basis. I have the will to fight, but I get my face bashed in. And so it's a problem. It's struggling. It's like you're Rocky Balboa and your flesh, your sinful nature is Apollo Creed, right? It's like you go out there with the best intent and your face is the punching bag, Yo, Adrian, and the Spirit's over the side and he's trying to coach you, Yo, Rocky, you're getting killed out there, and you're like, oh, just cut me, Adrian, just cut me, Spirit, I can do it. And God's like, I appreciate, but there's a better way. There's a better way than just going head to head. It's called changing the nature. It's called winning the battle completely in areas. It's not just having this battle going back and forth the whole time. It's a brutal fight, and if you don't handle it right, it leads to captivity, because he continues in verses 20 through 23. He says this, now if I do what I will not to do, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. I find then a law that evil is present with me, the one who wills to do good. In other words, evil is with me. I'm the one, me, is one who's willing to do good, and we have this struggle. For I delight in the law of God according to the inward man, according to the Spirit. But I see another law in my members warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. So if you don't battle it right, or if you placate to sin, or if you cooperate with the saboteur, or you're fighting the battle the wrong way, it says it can lead you to corruption. It can lead you to captivity. It can lead you to become a slave of sin. And that means in 3 here, means I'm being held captive against my will by my sinfulness. I may will something else, but I just don't have the right means to get away from it. It's mastering me. Can it do that to a Christian? You're a Christian. You have a new nature. Can sin overcome you? Can you be taken over by a sinful habit? Of course. And most of us do. Most of us struggle with something in our life. I would say all of us do, right? We all have areas where we're like, God, I hate this about myself. Well, why doesn't it change? Because we got this evil twin. And we let it in. But always on shows, especially the 70s shows, you know? They had the evil twins. You remember Knight Rider with the car Kit? Remember Hasselhoff, you know? Here he is, Michael Knight. So they're kind of like running out of ideas. So what do? Bring in his evil twin. How do you make an evil twin? Well, you give him a goatee and you turn up his collar, right? Now he's Garth. Now he's the evil. And you've got to have the light shining up from underneath, right? Or above. So kind of puts like a heavy brow, you know, and makes his eyes dark, you know, and he's evil. Garth, you know. And so they didn't stop there, but they said, man, I think people are eating this up. Let's make the evil car, right? The Knight Rider 2000, you know, Kit. Woo, 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 you know. And so now they came up with Car, Karr. And the only difference was its voice was was a little bit more evil, and it had a yellow light in the front, right? Woo, 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 woo. And so now, and then they had these battles back and forth, you know. So, you know, Hasselhoff is punching Hasselhoff, you know, and that's much like ourselves. It's like our evil twin comes out, right? Except your evil twin, probably maybe a little cooler, isn't just putting up his collar, you know, or whatever. But your evil twin, you're having it out with them, and you're like, oh, and there's certain areas where he knows your weakness, and he knows how to pin you. He knows how to get you. He knows your kryptonite. And you're like, this shouldn't be. I shouldn't be listening to my evil twin. I shouldn't be overcome by that part of my nature. And yet it's having its way with me. And Paul is saying, hey, I've gone through the same thing. The law of sin, or this principle of evil, is with me, and it's overcoming me. Like, I know thou shalt not commit adultery, but then my mind is flirting and going the whole time thinking of an adulterous relationship. And I'm struggling with it. What do I do? Or I know I shouldn't envy, or I shouldn't be having covetousness. And yet, you know, I'm really struggling because this person got promoted and that's a position I should be in. And I'm only thinking anger. I'm only thinking hate. I'm only thinking that man, I'm not being honored. I'm not being loved. I'm not getting my rightful place. Problem is, the law points out our sin, right? But it doesn't correct us. It doesn't help us change. That the flesh is winning the battle, and we need a new method. Sometimes we think, man, if I was only smarter, or if I was only stronger, then I would succeed against my flesh. But think about it. In the Bible, aside from Jesus, who is the smartest individual that walked the planet? Solomon, right? Was he successful with overcoming his sinful nature? No. He sinned abundantly. Multiple wives, bringing in idols, struggling mightily, one of the smartest individuals to ever walk the planet. And yet he sinned to a great degree. What about strongest? Who's the strongest man in the Bible? Samson, right? When the Spirit came upon him. And yet we look at Samson, and it's a classic story of somebody who has all the potential and yet fell big time. Lost honor, lost integrity, lost his strength. And you're thinking, okay, then how do I win this battle? I'm struggling, I'm fighting against it. And God is saying, it's not by strength and it's not by smarts. It's by allowing me to change you. Because we see another individual that was pretty smart and he was pretty strong. That was David, King David. Now he sinned big time too. But why is he called a man after God's heart? Because here's what David did that's different from Solomon, and it's also different from Samson, is David, when he sinned, when he was struggling with the flesh, when he finally was rebuked by the Lord with the law, man, you are guilty. David, you are the man. And he sat before the Lord. He says, all right, I will go to the law of the Lord. I will love the law of the Lord. I will practice the law of the Lord. Basically what he did, he said, I will sit before the Lord and worship. I will sit before the Lord. And he says, Lord, you judge me. You correct me. You guide me. You know my uprisings and you know my downsitting. You know when my mood swings. You know everything about me. And so I sit before you. You search my heart. He laid himself open and says, you do heart surgery on me. Scary thing, isn't it? Because we're like, I'm afraid to pray. Like, don't pray for patience because you don't know what God's going to give you. Man, you're going to struggle. You pray for patience. It's not always like that. Sometimes. But it is the best thing for us. It's for us to be able to say, God, all right, I'm baring my heart. I'm opening it up. You come in, and there's areas I don't like. There's evil clogged arteries. There's fatty tissue in here. There's valves that aren't working right that you need to correct. But are we willing to face that? Are we willing to say, I'm the man. I sinned. I need correction. I need help. I need you. And what God began to do, like he did with Jacob, is slowly change the heart. Because if your nature is changed, guess what? There's less and less fight, right? Because what happens is, not only does your mind, soul, and spirit, your decision-making process, including your body, begins to slowly change, you don't have that fight anymore. Or at least that fight becomes a normal temptation, right? Not this overwhelming, I got to sin temptation. He's like, let's begin to change the heart. Let's begin to change the nature of the beast. And what we do is we begin to take the fight out of the dog, right? And so, wow, I've got this war within me. All right, let me weaken the other side. Let me actually, nullify that. Let me balance out the good parts in you that need to be in there, right? Because God's not going to take away all things from us. There's certain things that he wants to leave. Verses 24 and 25, he says this, "O wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death?" In verse 25a, it says, "I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord." The body of death, it's not like, he's just waxing poetic. It's not just that he's waxing poetic. What he's saying is that he's writing to Romans. Romans knew this law. This was a law only for the treasonous. If you committed treason against Rome, against your Caesar, whether you're a Roman citizen or not, they would take you and they would strap you to what they call the body of death. So the body of death is where they dig up a grave or open a sepulcher and they get somebody who's ripe, maybe 3-4 days into it. Not a mummified dry corpse, but a wet, soaking, bug-infested corpse, and they strap you face to face with it. They strapped you face to face, your arms at its side, its arms around you, like it's embracing you. Death is embracing you, and its arms are wrapped, and you're strapped face to face with it, and you're put on the side of the road for everybody to see, just like they used to crucify by the road so people walking in and out would see. Better not mess with the Romans. This is like, you better not mess with Caesar. And if somebody came to get you or untie you, they would be strapped to that body. There's only one way out, and it was never recorded that anybody did this, but somebody could take your place. They would have to be strapped face to face with that rotting corpse and let the bugs crawl out of that corpse into you and eat you alive. And what does he say? Who's going to deliver me from this corpse I'm strapped to, this flesh that's ugly and sinful and corroding and rotten eggs? Who's going to deliver me? Thank God through Jesus Christ, because he took my place. He took my place. And I think this is what clicked with David. When David began to dwell on God, and he began to call God his Redeemer. God my healer, God my Redeemer, God. And he began to see the mercy of God. And it changed David. And David began to be just so thankful to God and seeking God and being repulsed by the evil ways. It was a heart change. He won over the enemy. In other words, the enemy's nature began to be changed. The inner nature, the way he made decisions, the way he allowed the flesh to over, because everything began to change. The gratefulness and the heart seeking after God, saying, do surgery, do surgery, do surgery, correct me, keep correcting me, allowed God to change David. Where Samson had to have his eyes put out. Solomon, to the very end, when finally he wrote, hey, after all this that I wasted, here's the conclusion. After all the things I've done, it's all vanity. Here's what you do. Love God and serve God. That's really what you should be doing, young man, young woman. That's what you should be doing. And that's what we've got to be able to say. And if you're not broken by the sacrifice of Christ, if you're not broken by that, if you still like, hey, I appreciate it, but you're not really appreciating it, you will continue in sins. If you're not broken by it to the place where you say, God, cut me, open me up. And I know this is going to be painful because I have to look at myself and say, this is sin. I hate this about myself. I want this to change. Until you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, you don't change. And sometimes it takes an event where, like David is exposed, where he says, David, you're the man. Or sometimes it's just that voice where God just corrects you and go, you know. I don't even have to say. You know what I'm about to say. And we say, here am I, Lord, guilty. Man, you need to work on me. There's areas we constantly need him to work on and in us. In verse 25b, so then, since Christ substituted himself, with the mind I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh, the law of sin. I recognize in my mind, in my spirit, I recognize that what God has done, but in my flesh, I still serve that. So what do? I must take what my mind knows is right and put it into my heart. Take what the spirit knows, what the mind knows, what I agree with God in, and engraft it in me. And James 1:21 says this, therefore lay aside all filthiness and overflow of wickedness and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. So the first part is reprogramming, right? You have to think differently. It can't be values where everything revolves around me. I may have to say no to me, no to my flesh, no to my desires, no to those things. And one of the things that enforces that and helps me is the Word of God, the law of God, as it's engrafted in me. And that's what David said. I love the law of God. I'm absorbed in the law of God. I can't get enough of the law of God. It begins to change me. And you are what you eat, right? What you sow is what you reap. And understand that years of habit in the flesh sometimes takes years of change. So if you're like, this doesn't work, no, you keep at it. Because remember, you got that muscle memory that just kicks in, certain things happen, certain chemicals go, and you just end up sinning. You're like, how did I get here? I didn't even think about it. My body just acted. Well, it's because of years of training your body to do evil. You have to have years of training your heart to change and to do that. So be an active person in the Word, because really, knowing about something doesn't change you. Knowing about something doesn't make you an expert. Knowing about something doesn't make you that thing. Like, you can read all the books about prayer, but it doesn't make you a prayer warrior, right? You got to pray. You can say, I need to love my brother. But until you start practicing it, being a doer of the Word, you're not a lover of your brother. You can know all the scriptures that are in there. You can say, hey, I need to be holy and I know these things, but until we do it, and then we got to make sure that we don't, like the earlier part said, that we deceive ourselves and side with the saboteur, that we talk ourselves out of it, that we say, oh, it's okay to flirt. You know, I'm not touching, I'm not doing anything. We're just flirting, we're just having good American fun. I'm a red-blooded American after all, or you know, it's not gossip. It's the truth. I'm just saying the truth about this person, you know. I'm not saying anything that anybody else doesn't know. No, it's gossip. It's something that if we don't handle, it'll handle us. Well, won't God just take it away? Yes, God can take it away. But that doesn't change you in the sense of being a better person. It changes you to be more and more of a robot. See, God doesn't destroy evil. He defeats evil. See, to destroy evil in you, which means he would have to take away your free will. Okay, I want to do this. Okay, I can take away the want, but that doesn't mean that you have the want to do what's right now. If I give you the want if I take away this want and give you this want, then it's not really what you want, it's what I want, and I've just programmed it into you. Now you become a robot. And once you become more and more of a robot, there's less and less of a love relationship. So instead of destroying evil, he comes along and defeats it by saying, I'm giving you victory by changing your nature.